So I'm gonna talk about my song, When Was the Last Time You Looked Inside? It's kind of a long name, and it is a good name, I think. I'm excited to get into it. I'll talk about the lyrics, the chords, all the other stuff, what it was and what it became, and what it is now. Yay. Okay, I've got my little book of notes. I started with the idea for another song, and that song was called How College, because this last school year, I just had my freshman semester of college, and wow, what a crazy year. This song is it's based on some of my feelings about being a college student and seeing other people, my friends, like close friends, that just live in such a college way, and I see them and I think, what are you doing? How are you living like that? Like, I was trying so hard to keep my life together, to see other people just doing crazy stuff all the time. I was confused, kind of annoyed sometimes, I'll be honest. I kind of felt like all these other people, they're not looking inside like I was really trying to do. So I'm not a super judgy person. This isn't a song it's not a spiteful song. It's more of a cautionary song saying, hey, I think it's important to look inside. You should really figure out what your feelings are telling you instead of not giving yourself time or space to feel anything. Okay, so as for the structure of the song, it's got like 4 parts. They're not really parts. So it's a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. I do have 3 different choruses, so like each one is different by a little bit at least than the previous chorus. So all the choruses are different. I have enough material in me to write another verse if I wanted to, but I don't really feel the need because I like the way that these verses frame it. So I could write another verse, but I'm not going to, probably. But I could. It's in there. The chords for this song, honestly, some of them made more sense to me than others. So the chords for the verse, I started out being like, well, it's pretty obvious that I want to start with C and then D minor, because that's a transition that I liked just based off the sound. I just like the way that it sounds. But then after the D minor, we go to F, so. And then after that, I was confused. I was trying to figure out what felt natural, what felt right. So, like I tried a lot of different versions, but the one that I settled on was going to the chord, I guess you call it GB. It's G/B. So that last one was GB, but I alternate that with the chord F7, which is kind of a fun ending, I think. So the way that the chorus works is you go C, D minor, F, GB, and then C, D minor, F, and then F7, and then you repeat that for the second part of the first verse, and then you go to the chorus. Now the chorus, I'm still kind of working on the chords because you can do different variations and it still works. But basically what I have is after the F7, I go down to the F, and then to the GB again, and then you just repeat that like 3 times, and then you go F to C for the last one. Now you can alternate an F for a C, and then go C, GB for one of the pairs. I wonder if like seeing it written out would make more sense. Goes out every night on a mission, no holding back and no remission. We've all got problems and some try to fix them, and the rest they just drink until they drop. That verse block is about watching these people go crazy every night for insane amounts of time, and acknowledging that as the person who's watching this, like, I'm judgy. I see you doing this crazy stuff and I think, what are you doing? I have so many problems too, and I have so many problems too, but I was trying to work through them rather than trying to forget all of my problems, trying to get rid of them or ignore them. That's not going to help, and you're just making things harder for yourself later. So that's where that comes from. And then the next part is, for the first time you don't have to ask permission, and if you did, your parents wouldn't listen. So just make it until the next weekend, and then pretend that you're happy being lost. That's how the first verse ends. That's the second part of the first verse. And that to me means, well, it means a lot. College was a crazy experience. So for the first time, you don't have to ask permission from anyone to do whatever you want to do. But there's also this new kind of freedom versus way too much time and you don't know what to do with it. And that's so overwhelming. I feel like that's not something that people talk about. College as being literally pushed out. Well, I have no idea what to do with myself. It can be really easy to, instead of just kind of like sit and figure out what you need to work on to make yourself be able to function in that state, it can be easier to fill that with things that are distracting, but that makes it harder in the long run. So also, parent relationships with parents in college are also difficult. I also watched a lot of people have really strange interactions with their parents. If you did ask for permission, some parents, my parents too, were like, you're kind of like, you're off on your own, so you're gonna have to deal with this. And so that's why that lyric is in there. There's also the notion of living for the weekend. I'm sure you know what that is, where basically you have to get through the week to make it to the weekend and then it'll be okay. But then for me, I was always like, you guys, after this weekend, like, we all have a class on Monday. Yeah, that verse is kind of about freedom versus too much time on our hands. What you gonna do besides distract yourself with crazy shenanigans? Oh no. Okay, so the chorus. When was the last time you looked inside? Are you scared of what you'll find? Feeling too much that makes you wanna hide? He'll lose his mind before he thinks about his life. That's the first version, and the chords, as I'm sure you saw, were just F, G, B, F, G, B, F, G, B, and then F, C. You can change them around, but that's the version I like the most because it just works. And GB has a lot of variance to it, like you can kind of take it different ways for the melody. The meaning behind the chorus, I really liked finding the phrase, when was the last time you looked inside? Because seeing this person really made me feel confused and wondering why he refused to literally just like stop and deal with the problems. I think it made his life more difficult. This verse was a little bit trickier to write just because it was the second verse that I wrote, and therefore you've used up some of the words already if you don't want to be too repetitive. So it was a little bit harder, but it also worked really well. I did struggle a little bit with some of the endings of the things because it was just hard to make it all fit together. Like the first verse did very nicely. I have to tune my ukulele. I had tuned it in like 2 days. Okay, she's all tuned. It wasn't even that out of tune. Verse 2. So convince yourself the guilt you feel is fiction. Push off the stress. Forget what's missing. I like this one a lot because I feel that often it's really easy to get overwhelmed in college, but I noticed this person just let it keep building up and then not address the problem. And then the next one, then get upset when no one wants to listen to you complain about how your life is so hard. That kind of continues that feeling as well. So I think those work really nicely together, showing the problem, but then also how you're actually causing it by not taking on these problems like you're supposed to, I guess. But who knows if you're supposed to. Also, I had alternate, like I had a different ending for these two originally, but I didn't like the way it worked with the next part, so I think I'm gonna keep it the way I have it changed. But that's why I think I could write another verse, is because the endings that I didn't use could fit into new verses with those endings. So that's why I think I could make another verse if I wanted to, but So, does what he wants and doesn't need a reason to stay out of touch with his feelings for you. We did this to yourself, don't think I'll come and help you when I tried to tell you this was wrong all along. This second part of verse 2 is more about how the relationship between me and this person was confusing for me, but also I think can relate to what other people might have felt, whether it was in a relationship or like a romantic relationship or just a friendship. I think it's relatable, and it also is so true, which is what I wanted to make. And also, I don't like the second part, the well, you did this to yourself, so I don't think I'll come and help you, just because the syllables, like it doesn't match up with the other ones exactly. I almost made it a pre-chorus and then put in a different one there, but I decided I didn't like that, so I think I'm keeping it this way. And then you repeat the chords for the chorus, but with different words this time. So, when was the last time you looked inside? It's so unfair, all that wasted time. So impaired now, you can finally cry. It's hard to fix yourself when you feel so far behind. I feel like that makes a lot of sense in context with the last verse, because it's more about how you have put yourself in this situation, and then it's only when you're literally impaired that you can finally admit that what you've done is like making your life hard. There's also then the idea that once you fall behind, it's a lot harder to catch back up, especially in college. If you don't stay on top of it, it's so much harder to catch back up. That's why I hate going on vacations and missing school days, is because if you don't keep with the work, it builds up and then you have to do a ton more and it just sucks. And you miss class and then you have to like come in and talk to your professor in office hours, which is helpful, but also it just is like, great, now this is going to take more time. So that's why I have it that way. And then the only other difference is, I guess we have the bridge. How could I forget? A lot of songs, surprisingly a large amount, alternate between just 4 chords. In this song, I have a 4 chord structure for the most part, but that's only really in the verses and the bridge. And for the most part, they sit the same ones, but there's lots of variation. So we do GB, but then we also do F7, and then those, well, yeah, so those are the those are alternates. But then also what I find some songs doing is they'll mix up the sequence of the 4 chords, like start one later to make a verse or to make a chorus different. And I always was so confused about how they did that. Like when I did it in my head, when I tried to make a song like that, it didn't work. And then I found this bridge. It just happened one day that I was like, oh, like that really works if I just, instead of starting with C, I start with the D minor, which is the one in the next sequence, usually for the chorus. So the bridge is, and maybe it's unfair to think of you this way, but you're not worth my caring if you don't reciprocate. Can't give my energy, there's not enough for you to take. Besides, you were meant to be someone who realizes too late. So that's the bridge. I sometimes feel bad for thinking of people in judgmental ways. Who am I to judge what you're doing? And then also the idea of how I'm sure we've all known people that you just have to keep giving them stuff and they never give you anything back. Maybe you're always the one to text them, maybe you're always the one who has to initiate conversations or else they won't respond or even start a conversation with you. That's very, very applicable, I feel. It's also not reasonable to ask me or to ask anyone to fix a problem that you have created in your own life. I can't ask someone to come fix my problems, and I can't fix someone else's problems. Even if they want me to, it just wouldn't work. And then also, the fact that we're all trying to deal with our own stuff makes it harder to fix someone else's problems on top of that. So that's why I like this bridge. It was a little bit of a struggle, and I also like the line, besides you were meant to be someone who realizes too late. And then the only other difference, the last chorus repeats the same words as the first chorus, except the last one is, I'd rather die than not think about my life. And I make that the ending line because I personally don't feel like I would want to be here if I couldn't let myself think about my own life. Trying to distract yourself from dealing with your own self is a horrible way to live. And so that's why that's the ending line. You might notice that there's not very much repetitiveness. Really the only thing that is repeated in this entire song is when was the last time you looked inside. I could repeat more, but I also don't really want to when there's already so much. I feel like there's just so much that I have to say sometimes, and maybe this is just one of the songs where I don't really repeat much. Anyways, there's a lot more to say about this song, but I promise it's not me being judgmental. It's more of me observing and thinking about it and kind of questioning and prompting others to maybe look inside more. It's okay to be lost in college, obviously. It's okay to be lost in any phase of your life. But I think it's also important to always be trying. Not that I know, but I think it's important to always be purposeful in your care for yourself. So I hope that this makes some people look inside more.